This is Jamie Drummond for Good Food Revolution. We have a returning interviewee today in Mr. Bernard Walsh. How are you today, sir?
Jamie, great. And as always, great to be back talking to you and with your lovely Canadian audience. I think we've been chatting with each other for many years now, so it's fantastic. I always love getting back talking to you, and occasionally we actually get to meet face to face. Today I'm in Carlow. It's the sunny southeast in Ireland, so it's it's just above Kilkenny on the southeast of the island, and it's a beautiful blue sky, dry day. Could ask for no more.
We're still in the midst of a Canadian winter over here, so kind of gray sky, still about a foot of snow on the ground. So you know what it's like over here. You've been over for our winter.
I love going over there. I'm not as hardy as you guys, so I wouldn't probably be able for the extreme cold. But I love it. I was over there in November,
yes.
And it was quite mild actually when I was over in November. So it was quite. I don't know what you're talking about, cold weather. You know, it was very nice.
So today we're going to be talking about the amazing growth that the Irish whiskey sector has seen over the last decade. We're talking about a growth of about 140%, which makes it quite an anomaly in the world of spirits, does it not?
It does, Jamie. It's an overnight success that's taken maybe 25 years. Right. It's been a long time in the making. So maybe to sort of appreciate that sort of level of growth, we've got to maybe look back a wee bit. And we would have spoken in the past about what's happened to Irish whiskey and how it ended up in the doldrums. But by about the late 80s, Irish whiskey, you could basically get a pen and draw a line through it. It was going out of business fast, but thankfully, quite a large French operator, Pernod Ricard, came in and took hold of the largest brand and distillery company, Irish Distillers, and really backed it, and have done a wonderful job in, first of all, stabilizing Irish whiskey by about the mid 90s. Just right. getting that stable and whatever. But it was still, when we started in 1999, 22 yes. years ago, Irish whiskey was minute. I think it was 2 million case sales globally, which it was just a drop in the ocean. Considering 100 years previous, Irish whiskey was one of the largest whiskey category. It was the largest whiskey category
yes.
in the world.
Yes, so it is.
And by 1999, it was virtually gone. But that's when bright spark that we decided to get involved in the Irish whiskey category, and maybe not paying too much attention to the numbers at the time, but thought that we could start and make a difference and help bring it back. And we're only one part of the renaissance, but it started really in the early 2000s, that renaissance, and we were helped by the boom in bourbon in the early 2000s. The younger generation taken to bourbon, which it hadn't been the case up to that. Now you take it for granted. All you hipsters, you love your bourbons, but I tell you, before 2000, Jamie, you are before 2000, maybe it was an older man's drink.
Yes.
But this young generation came along and they were drinking bourbon. And they migrated pretty seamlessly to Irish, because if you think of it, typically Irish was triple distilled, non-peated, but key to that, it was actually, most of Irish whiskey was matured in bourbon cask. So it was a taste that was accessible, and there was a lot of skipping and hopping between the two in the Americas. So that started a whole new era, and brought in a whole new generation to the Irish whiskey category. But Irish whiskey was still there was only a handful, there was only 3 distilleries all the way through the early 2000s. There was only 3 distilleries in the country. So the Irish whiskey as a street, as a, let's say, a class, as a type of distillate, was very simple in my view. Anyway, it was quite a simple stream. It typically was a blended Irish whiskey. It was very, very simple, very smooth, and that's the last thing I want to hear is, you know, yes, your whiskey is very smooth and easy to drink, which means to me is, you know, well, we'll shoot that one and we'll move on. So what happened to Irish whiskey? Where was the complexity? Where was the depth of flavor that was known back in the 1800s and the early 1900s? Irish whiskey was known for its flavor and depth, and was a really big-bodied whiskey. So we thought that as our remit, Walsh whiskey, when we were getting involved in the renaissance of Irish whiskey, was to bring, I suppose, to broaden out the taste profile of Irish whiskey, to bring I suppose to challenge what had become the establishment, really. And, you know, take for example, in 2008 we brought out the Irishman cask strength Irish whiskey. It was the first cask strength Irish whiskey to come to market in living generation, so in a living memory, 50 years. You know, there was no commercially available cask strength Irish whiskey. Why? Because, well, there was no need. There was no competition. There was no need to do that. It was, Irish whiskey was quite a small little category, so there was nobody looking for it, nobody challenging the category. So this is what the new whiskey company, the new distiller, the new brand owners can do. And so there was a lot of small Irish whiskey companies started up in those early years and started to challenge by doing things differently. And that's what Riders Tears is a really classic example, taking pot still Irish whiskey and single malt Irish whiskey and bringing those two together as just a beautiful marriage. It's a wonderful tasting whiskey, but nobody had been doing that for 100 years. You go back into the 1800s and that marriage of pot and malt was there every day, and we'd been starved of that for 100 years. So, you know, starting to do things that maybe had been done before, 100 years ago, but broadening out the taste profile for Irish whiskey. So that started to change people's perception of Irish whiskey and started to turn heads. So that gets us then to, let's say, 2010. And from 2010 till now, so 12 years, it's been a rip-roarer with new whiskey companies coming in, just challenging, bringing something new, whether it's on the pot still side of the house, whether it's on the malt, or whether it's in blends, whether it's working with double distillate or triple distillate, because yes, we've been known for triple, but why not the double? We've been known, I can honestly say I'm not a fan of peated whiskey. I'll put my hand up, I'm not, but it shouldn't stop me from experimenting, because there's many of our fans out there who would love to try something on a peat. So, you know, we're always we've got to challenge ourselves and broaden out the taste profile for Irish whiskey. So that's what's happened over the last 10 years. You gave, I think it was like compound annual growth rate for Irish whiskey. Yes. For the last 10 years has been at 10%, which is, you know, no other whiskey categories match that. And that's across all categories of Irish whiskey, so from standard value to premium to deluxe, etc., etc. But if you take what we call the super premium here, you call, let's say, deluxe category, like that's grown at about 19% compound growth rate for the last 10 years. Why? Because there was no super premium or deluxe category until about 10 years ago. There was a couple of brands playing in that space. There was a couple of brands you could get in Toronto, but that was it.
Well, one thing, as I was doing a study, just doing some reading on the recent history of Irish whiskey, the word premiumization came up over and over again. And I think that the Irish whiskey sector has definitely excelled in that field, and definitely broadening that spectrum of styles of Irish whiskey that are available. It's quite stunning to read up on, actually. And I can understand why the younger generations of whiskey drinkers are drawn to Irish whiskey styles.
Yes. And, you know, we always feel that we have won over our Scottish cousins because we have an extra style, which is the pot still style. Yes, we have single malt. Yes, we have blends. But we also have this pot still style, which is just a wonderful tasting whiskey. Quite can be quite oily, can be quite spicy. It's whether you use it in a blend or as a single pot still. It's just wonderful. So we have this whole other style of whiskey, not to mind the single malts, not to mind the blends to work with. And then for years, for all of my life, nobody had been working and bringing out really interesting wood finishes. Yeah. So we spent the last 22 years laying whiskies down, laying new make spirits down in regular casks, in irregular casks. You would have known, back in the autumn, I was in Toronto in November actually, and we launched the Irish Tears ice wine cask finish that was a collaboration with Inniskillen, and it was a first for Irish whiskey to do that. And why not? It's like I've got a sweet tooth. I love sweet wines, and what that imparts to the whiskey is just super, super, super.